We'll call to order the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 11th. Can we have roll call, please?
Franken?
Yeah.
Miranda?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Hostedi?
Here.
Kretz?
Here.
And McGivern.
Here. All right, that takes us to the Secretary's report. And may I have consideration of the June 13th, 2023 meeting minutes? Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Communications. Matt?
Yes, I have a few. So we've had an appeal of the certificate of appropriateness at 1208 Main Street, which was the Palmer Fraternity House. So as you're aware, the commission in May denied the request to replace 80 windows with vinyl windows. So the applicant decided to appeal this commission's decision to City Council. City Council unanimously upheld the commission's determination, basically determining that the commission followed its ordinances and guidelines and that it did not act arbitrary and capricious. And I want to thank Bob too for speaking before the City Council Commission before their vote and speaking on the importance of the commission and working with applicants. So credit to this body too for your work on that case. And then other communications, so Party in the Park. So we had our first one on June 15th. So thank you to Karen and Diane for standing out there with me in the heat. So I think that went well. So our next one's August 10th at Garfield Park. So we'll provide another update. I think that's the same week as our August 8th meeting. So if you're free, please come on out to participate in that. Oh, go ahead. It's not in the Collins house, but that house is at Garfield Park. So I was thinking maybe we could do like a little fact sheet or something fun about the house to pass out. I'll send out an email to the commission once when I have the layout for that event. Just a reminder, we're partnering with the Library Special Collections to bring back the Heart of Downtown Davenport Architectural Walking Tour. So there's 4 different dates that are being offered. So the first one's this Saturday, so definitely encourage your neighbors, friends, and family to participate. It's free to the public and open to all. And we have a local historian that's going to talk a little bit about some of the buildings downtown and some of our history. So this week, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions did their webinar on best practices, a guide to effective local preservation commission. Thought that this was a really informative webinar, talked about the role of the commissioners, of city staff, of the applicant, property owners, really touched on a lot of great topics that pertain to us. So the recording is now posted live and can be accessed by the broader public. And that's my last update.
Okay. Old business, we have none, so it takes us to new business. Case number COA 23-22, request for the installation of new soffit, fascia, and gutters at 511 Gaines Street, Hamburg Local Landmark Historic District. Jonathan petitioner. Staff?
Yep. So the home at 511 Gaines Street, it's located along Gaines Street, just abutting the alley. It's a familiar house that we've seen over the last few years. So today's petition is for a few different elements. So the first is to remove and replace the fascia and soffit. The current fascia and soffit are wood, and it's in a state of deterioration. They're proposing to replace it with new wood soffit and fascia that will be painted to complement the home. And then once when that work's complete, new gutters will be installed. So here are some images of the current condition of the soffit and fascia. It does have kind of a more Victorian trim and style that complements the John Sorry about that. So this was the carriage house to the John Ruck house, which is just the abutting home. So they both have that similar Victorian style trim and roof pitch. The homeowner had a new roof installed in 2021. So the previous house did have what appears to be aluminum gutters on it. When they reinstalled the roof, new gutters weren't placed on. So this application proposes to reinstall those gutters, which are important to keep the property in just a good state of repair. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the certificate of appropriateness to install the new soffit, fascia, and gutters in accordance with the submitted application. We're recommending just one condition, and that being to the greatest extent practicable, the replacement soffit, fascia, and trim board shall replicate the architectural appearance and dimensions of the existing, just to kind of keep that historic character intact. And then the project was reviewed for conformance with our historic preservation ordinance, and it meets the standards that every reasonable effort be made to keep the property in a good state of repair, and that deteriorated features be replaced where possible with compatible material.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the commission that has any questions? Go ahead.
Okay. I want to applaud the homeowner for taking this action. I went by the house to take a look at it, and clearly it needs this work. I just had a question about the fascia soffit business. Obviously, I understand where the fascia is, I understand what the soffit is. On the photograph that we have, and if you can go back to it, we have it next to the John Ruck house, there is a trim board that is below the soffit that's along the wall, along the brick wall. And I forget the term they used when I looked that up. Do you anticipate, after doing the repair, the structural repair, painting it similar to what we see with the Ruck house? That kind of...
Sir, if you could come forward and to the podium, please.
Okay, the existing paint job is just all solid blue, or kind of gray blue. Well, my question was, the house that we see to the right has that really nice trim line and the rest. It looks really terrific. I wasn't sure if that was your intention as well, to do something similar, or would it just be a solid color? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from commission? Staff, anything else to add?
No, nothing further.
Okay, I need a recommendation from the commission.
I move that we accept the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second to accept as amended staff recommendation. Roll call, please.
Miranda,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Hestetti,
Yes.
Kretz,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Yes.
Franken.
All right. Thank you, sir. That takes us to case COA 23-23, request for exterior alteration of 407 Main Street, St. Anthony's Church. It's a local landmark within the city, or Davenport Commercial Historic District. St. Anthony's Church is the petitioner. Matt?
All right, so St. Anthony's Church, so this is the original church. It was built in 1837. It's believed to be the fourth oldest building in the city of Davenport. Original footprint, it was 25 by 40 feet, so it's had a number of different additions placed on it over the years. One in which extended the length, and then the two separate wings on the north and south side were also added at a later date. So it was originally a red brick building. However, in 1947, when they built the new church just to the south, um, that church was built in stone, and at the time they decided to try to complement the new church, so they covered the original church in this permastone material, which you see today. So the original church, it's currently used for the McAnthony Window Program. So the purpose of the project is to seal and protect the exterior masonry and address some of those structural issues. And then a second phase of the project, which is outside of the scope of the commission, would be an interior remodel, which is needed to make the building more useful for the church's needs. And the applicant is pursuing a historical resource development program grant to help finance that project. In terms of today's application, addressing the masonry, so the first step would be crack sealing. So that would be to remove the deteriorated sealant and then apply new sealant to cracks. There's also micro cracking taking place on the surface of the structure. So that would involve cleaning the surface and then applying an elastomeric sealant to the cracks. And then finally coating. So they will be painting the exterior with a specialized paint, which is purposely used for painting masonry surfaces. And the applicant will be providing some color options at today's meeting. And then they also have gone out and hired a structural engineer to address some structural issues with the northwest corner of the property. So here in that photo on the right, you could see the original red brick underneath the permastone. So permastone will be salvaged to the greatest extent practicable, and then they will reconstruct the underlying brick facade and then reinstall the salvaged permastone to the exterior. And depending on the condition, they may need to bring in new permastone that best complements that facade. Another project component would be replacement of the windows on the building. So the existing windows, they are wood windows with an exterior cladding. They're double hung with the 1/1 grid pattern. They're not original, so they were installed, we think, about 20 years ago. So the replacement windows, they're custom-made wood windows that will fit the existing openings in a 2/2 grid pattern. So they're going to a 2/2 pattern. Now, we couldn't find any historical photos of how those windows may have looked when the building was first built. However, there is evidence just across the street in the downtown of buildings having that same 2/2 pattern. So staff doesn't have any, I guess, issues with that switch in design. The doors on the building will be replaced as part of this project. So the replacement doors are wood replacement. It's a 4-panel door, and the upper 2 panels will have glass. A new entrance will also be placed onto the building's north elevation on the 2nd floor. This is needed to meet building code for the interior of the building. So this is in a spot that currently doesn't have an opening, so a new opening will be placed in there. The Secretary of the Interior Design Standards recommend that when you need to place a new opening, that it be on a non-character defining elevation of the building. So hence, staff feel that that location is hidden and does not detract from that historic character. There are 2 exterior staircases along that north elevation. So those will be removed, and then new exterior staircases will be installed. So they'll be custom designed by Boiler's Ornamental Iron. They're metal, and they'll be painted black. You can see in that photo on the right, that door that's currently there doesn't meet building code. So that door will be both widened and I think also raised in height to meet that building code need. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the certificate of appropriateness in accordance with the submitted material. The applicant has stated that they would provide information on that paint color for us to discuss. Really, staff's recommendation is just to the greatest extent practicable, the color match the visual qualities of that permastone. And then staff reviewed the project for conformance with the review standards in our historic preservation ordinance. And it meets 4 standards, keeping the property in a good state of repair, repairing deteriorated features with similar material. Any activities that cause deterioration be discouraged. That third one also addresses the cleaning of the masonry exterior. And then 4 is that most properties change over time, and those changes that have acquired architectural and or historical significance in their own right be recognized, respected, and retained. So that kind of factors into the fact that that permastone has been on the building since 1947, so in its own right has historic value to it.
All righty. Commission, any questions? Do we want to grill the applicants? No? All right. Then I need a recommendation from the commission.
I move to approve the certificate of appropriateness in accordance with the submitted material.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Roll call, please.
Okay. I guess my one question is the color of the paint.
Oh, yeah.
If we wanted to
color of the
discuss
paint.
that. I don't know.
Come to the
'Cause
podium if you would.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you
that's fine.
told me,
No,
I forgot.
because my understanding it's not a clear paint color, but it can be a similar.
Come to the podium if you would, just because the microphone will pick you up.
So owners picked out three scenarios, and I'm not actually gonna do the paint, we're gonna have coloring. I ordered that from them, and they are heating the colors, and they're gonna put them on cardboard or poster board, and then we'll put them up.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so I guess what we could do is, it's up to the commission if we want to table that component and have them come back, or we can facilitate city staff to
That's
work
what I
with
was
the
gonna do.
applicant to.
Right.
Just
I was
to
going
know
to
your
say,
rec-
I'm going to amend my motion that
Okay,
with the provision of allowing the city staff to approve the paint color
okay.
with the intention of it matching as closely as possible.
And you're good with that with the second? Okay, with that modified motion with the second, thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Hestetti? Yes. Kretz?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Franken?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay.
Good luck with your project. All right, that takes us to other business, review of the commission bylaws.
Before we get to that, where's the appropriate place for me to, you'd already talked about the webinar. I'd like to make some comments about it. Where would be the appropriate place to do that on the agenda?
For the webinar? We could handle it under open forum for comment if you want to discuss the bylaws first, then,
Okay.
or is it wrapped up if it's tied in?
No, since you brought it up already, I just want to make some comments on it. It was a good webinar. I just thought there was some points that we needed to,
Would it be relevant before our bylaws discussion?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, perfect. All right, we will do other business and takes us to review of the commission bylaws. Matt, start us off.
Okay. So following last month's meeting, really the only edit that I've made to the draft from a month ago is I changed, Michael, the language from no less to no fewer. So just the grammar. So there's really only one word change with the document that's in front of you from a month ago. But this afternoon, I did get a couple of comments from Bob and Christine, so those are printed off in front of you. So I don't know if we want to discuss those first. So basically, staff will take any comments that you have. We could talk through them as a commission, we could revise, discuss with our legal department, and then bring it back if everyone's comfortable for a vote. And, you know, we could just keep doing this until everyone's happy with the state of the bylaws.
Okay. Christine, do you want to start off with your submission and kind of explain it?
Sure, no, the first two are just some suggestions to maybe combine sort of what you already have and maybe some of the things in these that weren't addressed in the draft to take a look at. I'm still a little confused on where it talks about us adopting our own administrative and procedural guidelines. Is that still going to be in somewhere, either in ordinance or in code or in bylaws, or is it just eradicated?
No, so that reference so chapter 2.65 is a city ordinance, which discusses the makeup of the commission. So adopting its own administrative and procedural guidelines, that is the bylaws.
Okay. What about though the specifics in terms of like how we're gonna do the elections?
So
I
I
mean,
know that we've had some comments about how to lay out a procedure.
correct.
So I've referenced our other boards and commissions. So the planning department does zoning board of adjustment, historic preservation, plan and zone, and design review board. And what is in the draft is pretty consistent with what we have in terms of our other boards. And then I've referenced a few other peer cities in Iowa and how they outline election procedures, and I don't see a lot, so I kind of want more direction from the commission and what would be a good way to write out the procedure for future elections.
Sure, and I provided that at a meeting when we were over at the police department.
Okay. Would you be able to provide me?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just simple stuff, but I think we need to have a way of that, of how we're going to do it, like, you know, first of all, starting with the chair and then voting for the vice chair, because last time that was a little, you know, we kind of tried to do it together. I think we should have it laid out, that we do it one at a time.
Okay, so we could write in language, basically, the election of chair will be first, vice chair will be second, separate votes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And then what do we decide on? Do you have to be here? I've heard a lot of different things. They have to be here physically, they can Zoom in, they can tell the chair what their vote is.
so the way that these bylaws are written is that commissioners are expected to be physically present at the meeting in order to exercise their vote. Remote voting may be authorized by the chairperson if given proper notification in advance of a meeting. So the expectation is that everyone be physically present. If for some reason you're unable to be present but wish to participate, it's at the authorization of the chairperson if given proper notification in advance of the meeting.
I'm trying to find this because it seems like that's not the same when you look at all the different documents we've had, like the ordinance. It didn't seem like it was consistent. Maybe that was just the difference between the draft and the last one.
Yeah, so this was clarified from the existing bylaws, because basically I wanted to include something in there, if, God forbid, like another COVID happened, that we have a mechanism in place to participate virtually, and then put it in writing too, so that way it's outlined, and we have a reference point that we could all look at and follow.
So in an election, as it stands, someone can talk to the chair and not be here and find a way to still vote.
So this pertains to all votes of the commission, whether it be a certificate of appropriateness or if by chance that agenda has the election of officers on it for that.
Sure. But right now, I'm just talking to the election. That was the procedure that we
Yeah, so
were.
that would be applicable to elections as well.
I'm just wondering how everybody feels about that, if we're on board with that or not. Absolutely. Go ahead.
one thing, I've wondered from the beginning what administrative and procedural guidelines we're talking about. I think those need to be first outlined.
So that would be the bylaws that are before you today.
Administrative
Okay.
procedural guidelines is just legalese for bylaws.
Yeah, so that's our bylaws.
Right, but the point is, the bylaws need to be specific enough so that we know the process. Under Article 5, Section 9, we reference Robert's Rules of Order. We say that will essentially be the template that we're going to follow in our meetings. Robert's Rules of Order in Chapter 12 has a 20-page section on election. We don't need 20 pages.
Right.
We don't in any way, shape, or form. But it does list every conceivable possibility of ways of electing people. I think what we're looking for, and Christina's getting this as well, we're looking for a straightforward, easy to understand, and doable process. But that needs to be in the bylaws. We can't simply reference Robert's Rules of Order because it's too broad.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure when I was working this up, I apologize, I didn't send it to you. I've got all this stuff here and I thought, oh, no, we'll talk about it tonight. Would you prefer that we send you suggestions, or will your staff go through and say, well, we'll do these things?
I am open to commissioners providing their own draft statement for us to review and provide then to the whole commission.
And as I understand it, our process for that is always to send everything to you. I mean, I don't send it to everybody here.
No, right.
That's not allowed.
Right,
I send
exactly.
it to you, and then you will share it with
Correct.
people. Okay, all right.
The other thing I just want to go on the record, the changeover from roll call, it used to be secret ballot. I preferred the secret ballot in the elections.
We could discuss that with the legal department. I think this was the only board or commission that did a secret ballot. So I think the preference might be to go to the roll call, but I can discuss that with legal and see what their comments are.
So we're looking at preference versus requirement.
I'm going to try to see what the city precedence is.
Okay.
And then, Matt, we could have a little more understanding from that, too. If it's a preference, does the commission have the ability to ignore the preference?
Exactly.
Sure.
You know, I guess that's just, I mean, let's just be grown-ups and ask the question.
Yeah,
And
that's
find
fine.
out.
Good point.
That's kind of what I meant when I didn't feel that procedures were really defined.
Okay.
A stupid question. When we're doing our voting, whether it's during the meetings and or the election, we've got yay and nay, but can somebody abstain or pass or?
Yes, and I do think that's valuable to add under that voting section.
Correct.
So commissioners have the option to vote yay, so yes, nay, no. Present, which is essentially a no vote, or to abstain from voting. So abstaining would be, I have a conflict of interest, I will step down from my position and not participate.
Now, Matt, is that our choice? Because I have a problem. My concern
So-
with that is we're here for a reason, right? We're here for a reason, to serve the public good and to make sure that public business is taken care of. Pass is not doing your job, right? So is that, again, a preference or is that a legally requirement? I never knew we had that option.
I disagree with that.
I
You know, I think if somebody consecutively does that, then yes. But I think if it's done on occasion, especially if they do feel there's a conflict of interest.
Well, there's a conflict of interest. There's
Would
a
be
clear present process to
Yeah.
deal with that.
So conflict of interest would be abstaining. Present essentially is, in a way, a no vote because you do need a majority to vote in favor of something for it to pass. But that's to each commissioner to decide if that's the correct vote for you.
it'd be informative to know if that is, again, an option that we have, or it is a requirement just by legalese.
Sure.
Because we can always disagree, I mean, that's fine, but we've made the commission smaller. Thus, when someone doesn't do their job,
We didn't make it smaller.
I agree with that. The commission has been smaller. And so because of that, you know, if one person, you know, we have to make tough decisions. You know, that's the reality of why we're here. And if someone doesn't do their job, it puts the peril, and it doesn't serve the public. And that's just my opinion, but it's a great question. I didn't know that's a great question.
The other thing that I had on my sheet that I emailed today was, I was a little confused by the terminology where it says in section 3 about work sessions, that we would discuss items which will not require a formal vote at a later date.
So that would be, for instance, our educational events that we've done, trying to promote walking tours, public outreach. Those would be items that we're not voting on an agenda, but if we want to discuss in a work session in more detail, that would be a good setting for that. The direction that I've received, and I think in the past we've done this, is if we have an applicant that will come before the commission but isn't ready yet, that should be on the agenda and to provide feedback.
Because that's not typically how we've done it, so that's a change.
Yes.
That's a shift. That basically just means that our learning curve is gonna be in front of the camera.
Not necessarily.
We're very limited on how we can even communicate with each other. If I don't particularly know how to do soffits and Diane knows it really well, me being able to just simply ask her, hey, what's your experience on that? I can't do that because of the open meetings thing, or, you know, and if I do it one-on-one with her, that benefits me, but it doesn't benefit anyone else that may not be as knowledgeable about that topic. I wish there was a way that we could share our knowledge and our expertise in this group with each other. And I think that leads to some of your abstaining because people don't feel that they have necessarily the knowledge they wish they had to make a decision. Which I think could be easily remedied if we were allowed to communicate somehow.
That's an interesting point you're making, and I really like what Bob was suggesting in his comments, his thoughts about the types of people we need on the commission, the people, the different degrees of expertise in different areas. And for example, I'm not sure, do we have a Realtor on right now?
Our chair.
Bob? Okay. Well, I didn't know you were, but.
I don't sell, I'm just.
But you know about real estate. And so I think you could do a lot to educate the rest of us who are not familiar with that. But how that happens, I guess, is maybe the point that you're trying to make, Christine. Because, yeah, there are times when I think we need to have that give and take. Not to argue, not to persuade, but just to, what does this mean? And if we had someone on here who is an architectural historian, that kind of person could suggest some things. I mean, we had the people come out on the windows, and that was terrific. But a lot of that education can take place monthly right here. So yeah, how do we do that
Well, so
efficiently?
those would be items that aren't going for a vote. So if a commissioner wanted to present their profession and how that might benefit the entire body, that could be a work session because we're not voting on a specific application.
But it might be relative to a particular item we have.
Yes, but if we talk broadly, like for instance, we had the SHPO presentation, that was a work session where we talked broadly about windows. We didn't talk specifically about one property and one property's windows.
Right.
That's the differentiating factor.
But it's always in degrees, because the window people were down there for a specific, they were here to inform us because we knew we were going to need to be informed. So it's always kind of a shift, right? And as I've said before, and I'll come back around to this, let's still stay on the agenda, but I truly believe we need street level advice on how to communicate. I've talked about this before. I know the legalese, but, and we'll get into that later. We'll figure it out. Did you cover everything you got? What I do want to say, Mike or Matt, that I like about the one thing that we put on here was the if there's a vacancy or a member that doesn't show up, and we've had this before, where then staff feels like they don't want to be the bad people because they'll call and say, "Hey, where's it at?" The one time, you asked me to call, and I called the individual and said, we need you. And, so you have to make a decision. But it was still kind of quirky because staff didn't know if it was legit, should do it, I should, So I think the clarity there would be so nice.
Okay.
That way staff knows we'll pass it off to the chair.
And the chair has some direction also.
Absolutely. And that takes the burden off staff. So I thought that was a really good point. And we need to find out about the paths that are up. That's interesting. I never thought about that. Here's my suggestions I threw through there, and I'm going to be honest with you. A plagiarization from Des Moines, and talked to a couple members up there trying to get a see how they worked the commission. I will go backwards and work up on elections. Basically, their staff just conducts them, and they just know who won. They just know. They don't do ballot, but the staff runs it, tallies it, and then they move on. And that was a clarification that how they did it. I think if we can do ballot, I think ballot is just fine. It seems like it's we all small working group together, make sure everyone feels comfortable. If that's allowable and good for the commission, I think we should probably look at that. But that's what Des Moines does. Des Moines does have term limits. And there's a waiver process if they can't find somebody or they want someone to stick around, the mayor can waive. I just think it's important that, and it's happened on commissions in the past, where it gets very settled. People have been there for a very, very long time. 8 years, it's time for me to go. It's time for new blood to come through sooner or later. And I think term limits, and we should structure this commission so people want to be on it because there's so much good that can happen out of this commission. So that's just my thought for you all to consider. I think they do 3 terms in Des Moines, but their term limits are 3 years, and I think ours are 2.
Ours are 3.
Oh, are they? Well, then I'd probably want to modify that then a little bit. Yeah.
Sure.
Because I thought ours were just 2.
3.
Okay.
And I'll have to look in to see if that's something the commission can determine term limit, or if that's something that the mayor determines, or city council.
Yeah.
That
And
could
again,
be-
and if it's something preference, or if it's something that if we believe in strongly as a commission that we can do. Because I understand these bylaws, we approve them, it doesn't go to council or anything else like that. Okay, perfect. And the last one I talked about is professional requirements. The history of the commission, they used to have this, I know, here in Davenport, and then it kind of went to neighborhood-centric and maybe some lacking, in the 90s and that of some expertise, and I think that had an impact. And I think that, I think all of us that are here today fall into this pool, but it should probably be in there. So when the individual comes on, so like for myself, Bill Gluba, when he was mayor, asked me to come on because they wanted somebody for real estate to be involved, and that's how I got involved. So I think that if there's at least 4 people have to have this type, or all of them have to have this type of background, I think it'd make the commission stronger. And that's just something I want you to think about.
I think that's fabulous in an ideal world, but I think you see a lot of commissions struggling to get people to get on the commission
Yep.
in the first place. And what happens if you have an empty, you need somebody and they don't have that qualification? But you need a body on there to, I mean, I think there's just gonna be some gray areas where you have to be relaxed. This is wonderful. I think it's great if it works. But I think this commission's had some challenges in the past in trying to get people on at all.
You know, I can only say my own experience. I talked to 3 specific people who seemed very interested at first, but somehow later on decided it was not for them or whatever. No,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's difficult.
So chapter 2.65 does have language on composition, and it does list out professional experience in trying to get those types of trades and expertise on the commission. So that's why that's not in the bylaws, because it's an ordinance.
But it can't be in the bylaws.
What?
But it can be in the bylaws.
It would be like a duplication of another section.
But our ordinances have to be modified as well, right?
No, ordinance, so city ordinance is current,
Right?
bylaws were old.
Got
When ordinances were brought up, the bylaws were never changed. So now this draft will make it current with our code, so it's all relevant and accurate.
Okay.
The one thing that I had, in terms of election, we had talked about what month we wanted to hold an election. So currently, it's the first meeting of the calendar year. So in a perfect world, everyone serves 3-year terms. Your term ends June 30th. So the first meeting of the calendar year would give that person 6 months of experience on the commission before even having to take a vote. Now, I know we've had people move out of Davenport, and we've had vacancies, and we've had people currently serving that weren't brought on in June. So I don't know if there is a perfect month, but I wanted to get the commission's feedback on what month seems the most appropriate.
Christine?
My only concern is, again, and we've talked about this, that the holidays are right before January, which is the first month of the year. Will we be prepared enough to go ahead and get a vote at that time? And that's going to require that we have some due diligence. I don't know when that would be, November, December, because typically sometimes we even cancel meetings in December because we don't have enough business. And I know that in our conversations in the past, Laura had talked about maybe the fall would be a better time to do that. So I don't care when we do it, as long as we have time to prepare to have a fulfilling, meaningful voting election process.
I think my only observation would be that we'd want the elections for the commissions to follow municipal elections. Because we do serve at really kind of the pleasure, so to speak, of the mayor and the council. And if there was ever changes, sweeping changes, I always thought after November is always better. That's just my perspective, personal perspective.
So I have a question to those of you who have been on this for years, not months, but years. When I came on, which was last fall, we didn't have business for 2 months, almost 3 months, and then here we were. Is that typical? Do we normally have a dead period, not dead, wrong, bad word. Do we normally have a period where there is no business, so we do not have a meeting? I'd like to see us pick a time for the election that is away from that period. I think your point is well made, though, or well taken, that maybe we want to make sure that the officials do their thing, and so that we kind of fit in under them. But does that mean we push ours to mid-spring or something? Is that a better time? I'm just curious, from your experience on the board, commission.
Yeah, my experience is exactly that. I think that we aren't as busy usually in those months. And I think this is our ramping time. This is when we're busy. This is when we're fresh. We've got things going on. To me, it's a better time to be working towards an election. But I don't know how that plays into the municipal calendar.
Is that always in the fall? Always in November?
I don't remember I'm just trying to think back when I first came on the commission and John Free was commissioner, or the chairman, when we did it.
I have to assume it was the first meeting of the calendar year, just because that's what the bylaws were. But that predates my employment with the city, so.
I just don't remember.
Because John was still on when I came up, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I just don't
I
remember.
just,
And I guess something worth noting is keep in mind if we set, let's say we decide that January first meeting of the year is the best one to go with. If for some reason that January meeting rolls around and, you know, 2 people are on holiday, you could always table an election until everyone's present, or table if you're not prepared to vote.
Or another way of looking at it is the election the business of the meeting? If nothing else comes up, would we
Could be.
still have a meeting because it is the time for the election?
Could be.
And then staff would just call the meeting and, I mean, so then we could just pick a month.
can I go back one topic to what you really came up with, Bob? Or no, I don't know. I don't know. I should give credit to Bob. It's on Bob's page. When you're talking about the different people that should be on here, I think one area that's missing is someone who has an expertise and experience in historical restoration. I mean, a perfect example is Marion McGinnis, who used to be on this. That's someone who has the expertise herself and has experienced who knows how many restorations. We often go to some of those people and ask their opinion, but wow, it would be a coup to have someone on like that.
We run the risk, though, with those people, unfortunately, of having conflicts of interest. That person would have to really manage
Yeah, yeah.
themselves in that,
Yes.
if they're local.
That's true.
It's a catch-22 of that.
Yeah.
We always have to, and just we'll use Marion as an example. She was historic preservation before she became on historic preservation. And when she became on preservation, she moved into a leadership for the community, which, you know, if we structure the commission right, you breed leadership, which is exactly what this is about. And so, I agree with you, but just use her as an example. I think I was Marion's first client. Her first paid client. And, you know, she started out just being a historic preservationist, so to speak, and then moved forward. So the commission builds those type of people over time too, or has the ability to do so, without a doubt.
I'm also thinking David Cordes. I mean, there have been people that have gone through this and then have been on and then go on to other things. So.
Okay. Matt, anything else?
Well, I guess, or should I keep
Yeah, keep
January?
going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep that first meeting of the calendar year? Whatever you guys tell me, that's what I'll put in the bylaws.
Well, why don't you put in the first of the year and another option for fall, and as we work through this, we'll strike one of them out and keep the other. It sounds like this is a working document. I wanted to make sure there was no final decisions made on any of this, to make sure everyone's comfortable, so throw 2 up and we'll redline one of them out before finalization.
Okay, so we'll keep that highlighted for
Absolutely.
further discussion.
Absolutely.
As
We
I get
shouldn't
back
kill any
to,
ideas.
yeah, as I'll get more feedback from other city staff with your comments. If you have suggested language that you want to see in terms of this is how the election should be run, and you want to take a draft at it, please feel free to do so and send that to me, and I could look it over and incorporate that.
What I hear, though, is by ballot, to find out what kind of direction of by ballot is possible.
Yes, I can get clarification on that.
Correct.
Are we keeping in the mayor can waive?
I think was that just from Bob's sheet?
It's just a recommendation. You always have to have,
I agree.
yeah, you always have to have a,
Well, you never know also if there's some tragedy that he just has to say, you know, I know it's time for you to go, but we really need you right now. I think it's good to keep it in there.
yeah, always, right. I mean, term limits would be new, so I just threw in there a waiver. You always have to have a backdoor or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'll ask if that's something that is in the purview of,
Yeah.
of this document.
If someone's willing to stay on, we can't find a replacement for that term limit person.
right, until we find, an architect or somebody, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
assuming we all want that person on here.
yeah. Right. Gosh, right.
Well, it makes it a good point, too. If there's somebody you're trying to move out, that does leave them a door to hang on.
Oh, yeah, there always is, but there isn't right now. I mean, you just get because, third floor has just got other things going on and they just, it's low priority and they don't find anyone for the commission. Somebody can linger for quite some time. So, which is the nice thing about term limits, because then you get new blood in and
Yeah.
let somebody go do something else. Something to think about. I mean, we don't have to decide today. Anything else?
Just a question. If terms start June 30th, how do we count the years for people who came on at a time other than June 30th? Is it 3 years plus the months they were on before the 30th? Or does that few months before the 30th count as a year and then they continue?
There's an internal document that has every position and when your term limited is. So if you filled in for a vacancy, typically you serve the remainder of that person's vacancy and then are up for a renewal for a full term. Which after the meeting, I can find it if you have a question on when yours is.
That's fine. Good, that makes sense.
Okay, any other thoughts? Is there anything else you got there with that, Matt?
No, that's all I have for me. I don't know if Christine.
Okay.
you-
So let's go ahead and modify some of these suggestions and let everyone ponder them a little bit. And we'll kick it around next meeting and try to shape this up. I mean, we've got stuff before us. We've got a draft, so we should be able to maybe shake down a little bit in the next month and then go from there. Okay. All right, and so that will take us to open forum for comment. We have no one from public, but Christine?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity and sharing that information on the webinar and the training. I thought it had some amazing, good points and recommendations in it relative to us. And I don't know if this is in place, but I like the idea they said of having for the first, when the public first comes to us and they have our first contact. I know sometimes that can be overwhelming for them. Do we have like a flow chart or like a typical timeline, something that might help them? The other thing that they talked about is having cheat sheets available that would have lists of past projects that they could look at or maybe drive by and take a peek at. I thought those were all really good, and that kind of went hand in hand with, something that we have strongly been talking about as a commission is we need to beef up our online presence. And it talked about online having pictures of maybe some former projects, having pictures of award winners, significant things in town that have happened. So it just kind of validated what we've been saying. And the last thing that I thought was kind of neat was having the commission take a field trip to another commission and see how they do things and learn from them. I think that's always helpful. So I just wanted to bring those points up and say, great webinar, and thanks again for sharing. And
Since Christine, use this for open forum for comment. Let me just rehash this on communication. Commissioners can talk to each other. What we can't do is we can't conduct business with each other with an issue. And email is discouraged because it can get out of control. It's a reply or a forward, and when it's replied in a forward, then it gets into legalities. I think it's how we've been told. But we can talk to each other. We can pick up the phone and call Diane or Christine or Karen with an issue that's on the agenda, as long as you make no meetings of the minds, as I understand, and have a general understanding, right? That is street common sense type of ways to communicate. What we can't do is lobby each other or like manipulate votes or whatever else for one way or the other. But we can pick up the phone and call each other. I have that sheet that everyone filled out. I was going to just send that out. I had everyone's email and phone numbers on that. And then we had the issue across the street, and I just thought it was a good time not to do that. Okay? But I have that, and I will give that out. But we can talk to each other and ask questions. There's expertise on the arts or in education that I may not know. I can call Diane. If there is, an issue with engineering and we have an engineer, I'm going to probably, at least during the meeting, say, I don't know. But we can communicate with each other. We just can't conduct business with each other. Does that make sense?
It does, but like if you call Diane and talk about the arts and you get some great jewel of information from her, what a shame the rest of us don't get to have that. How do we share the, not specific to applications, but specific to issues we face as the HPC?
Right. And so usually then it's pass that on and distribute it to the commission. It's a very simplistic way. They're the mailman, so to speak, and it keeps us all out of trouble, and it makes sure that we have transparency in front of the public. So if we have, hey, I talked to Diane, and she has a great idea, then send it to staff and they'll disseminate it. What we decide to do with it, that's all on us. And if we don't do anything, that is on us, right? So you can always be, and you always have to be an advocate for historic preservation and the commission, and not mutual opinions. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I always view it as a street common sense type of a way. And this is no different than our city council and how they conduct their business. You just can't conduct business behind the scenes via email, telephone, that kind of thing. It's just, you can ask for somebody for their expertise. That's why we're here, and share that expertise without conducting business.
I also think the work sessions are invaluable. I think I'm probably the only person that thinks we should have more because,
Yeah.
The clock ticks. But gives us a chance to give that information, that knowledge that we all have to other people.
Does that communication from a philosophy, does that make sense? I don't know, maybe it does cause confusion, but I feel like there's just like this bottle cap on here that we can't do anything, and that's not the truth.
Perfect example is the difference between how government runs and how the educational system runs. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with children. And when I say children, I include high school kids.
Okay.
But it is a different world.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, coming to the end here. We have next meeting is August 8th. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second? A motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Pass? All right, thank you. Have a great day. I never knew.